Tonight, we peel back the charred veil of history to reveal a forgotten chapter of war, one written in whispers, shadows, and broken souls. Beneath the roar of fighter engines and the deafening thunder of kamikaze strikes, lies a secret so profound it was buried in darkness. A lone pilot flew between two worlds, his allegiance concealed by deceit, his sacrifice erased by silence. Brace yourself, for once you glimpse this truth, there is no turning back. Snow fell like ash over Leningrad. The winter of 1942 was cruel, even by Russian standards. The city, surrounded by Nazi forces for months, had become a frozen tomb. Electricity was a memory, bread a rumor, and silence the prevailing sound, broken only by distant shells or the groans of the starving. In this desolation, cellist Ivan Myrov clutched his instrument tighter than his ration card. Before the war, Ivan was a professor at the Leningrad Conservatory. A man with silver hair and kind eyes, he once filled lecture halls with theories on Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff. Now, his fingers, once so agile, were cracked, bleeding, and numb from cold. Music, it seemed, had no place in this dying city. But Ivan disagreed. It began in a bombed-out basement of a ruined theater on Nevsky Prospect. There, by the flickering flame of a stolen oil lamp, he met again with three old colleagues, Elena Zakharova, the fiery violinist, Mikhail Antonov, a timid violist who hadn't spoken since his wife succumbed to starvation, and young Lev Bronsky, a prodigy pianist turned clarinetist after his piano was ground to rubble. They didn't meet to survive, they met to play. The Leningrad Quartet, they called themselves, though there was no audience left to applaud them. They played not for cheers but for memory, sanity, defiance. At first, it was a whisper of music, each note trembling into the darkness. But word spread. A whisper became a rumor a beacon. Civilians crawled through snow and rubble to hear the music that floated out from the basement. A Soviet officer who once served in Moscow's orchestra heard the strains and ordered guards to protect the building. Ivan feared the Germans would hear them, but something strange happened. The shelling often paused when they played. Perhaps it was coincidence. Or perhaps even the enemy recognized the sheer absurdity of music blooming amid slaughter. In January, something impossible was proposed, a performance of Dmitri Shostakovich's Symphony No. 7, the Leningrad Symphony. The score had been smuggled from Moscow, hand-copied by a young Red Army courier who died days later from typhus. The symphony was too large for 4 musicians, but desperation births miracles. Instruments were found in wreckage. Musicians emerged from cellars and hospitals, half-starved, some missing fingers. With frostbitten hands and hollow eyes, they assembled in the remains of the Leningrad Philharmonic Hall. Rehearsals were punctuated by air raid sirens. One rehearsal ended when a bomb destroyed the rear wall. Still, they played. The Soviet military committed to supporting the performance. Artillery batteries were ordered to fire simultaneously to drown out the music from being detected by the Germans, who were stationed just outside the city. On August 9, 1942, the impossible happened. The Leningrad Radio Orchestra, supplemented by Ivan's quartet and other survivors, performed the 7th Symphony. Loudspeakers were rigged across the city. The music rang out not only to Leningrad but beyond the front lines, into German encampments. Ivan conducted the second movement himself after the maestro collapsed from exhaustion. When he lifted his bow during the finale, Elena's strings wept, Lev's clarinet sang like a mourning dove, and Mikhail, silent for months, let a single tear fall as he bowed. German soldiers, stunned by the eerie power of music in a land of death, recorded in their diaries that something divine and unexplainable floated over the trenches that night. One German sniper, later captured, claimed he lowered his rifle when he heard the final note. The performance marked a turning point. While it did not break the siege, it reignited hope. Supplies followed via the ice road across Lake Ladoga. Soviet offensives gained momentum. The Nazis, unnerved by the morale of a starving city that could still produce beauty, began to withdraw resources. In the months that followed, the quartet played in hospitals, refugee shelters, and even trenches. Ivan lost 2 fingers to frostbite but continued playing by adapting his technique. Elena was later killed during a shelling while protecting her violin with her body. Lev joined the Red Army as a frontline musician, blasting music from mobile speakers to counter Nazi propaganda. Mikhail, forever silent, wrote a single letter to Ivan before his death from dysentery. The music reminded me I was still human. When the siege finally lifted in January 1944, Leningrad was more shadow than city. But among its ruins, in a broken theater basement, Ivan Myrov still played. He no longer had an audience. He didn't need one. Years later, during a war crimes trial in Nuremberg, a captured German general was asked what moment broke their confidence in victory. He answered, "When I realized they played symphonies while we starved them. That's when I knew we couldn't kill their spirit." In 1961, a young Soviet filmmaker documented the story of the quartet, piecing together interviews and battered sheet music. Ivan appears in the closing scene, now old and hunched, playing a cello with scorched strings. He doesn't speak. He plays. No words are needed. In the heart of occupied Paris, laughter was an act of rebellion. That was the philosophy of Claudette Renard, a soft-spoken woman with raven-black hair and ink-stained fingers. While the German war machine ground across Europe, Claudette fought with weapons of satire, hidden messages, and a steady drawing hand. She was no soldier, yet she would become one of the most elusive spies in France, remembered not for gunfire or sabotage, but for cartoons. Before the war, Claudette had drawn whimsical comics for Le Petit Parisien, illustrating clumsy wolves and philosophical cats. But after June 1940, when Nazi boots marched through the Arc de Triomphe, her pen turned into a scalpel, slicing through fascist arrogance. Her comic strip, Lulu Idiot, the Idiot Wolf, began appearing in a small underground newspaper, Le Cri de la Liberté. To the uninformed eye, it was harmless nonsense. To those who knew, it was a guidebook to subversion. In one strip, the wolf tries to eat a clock but chokes, an absurd image, unless you knew the clock referenced a munitions depot scheduled for sabotage at precisely the hour shown. In another, the wolf paints stripes on himself to hide among zebras, subtly indicating disguised Nazi vehicles moving toward Normandy. The drawings were crude, childlike even, but the information they carried was razor-sharp. British intelligence took notice. Airdropped pamphlets reported increased effectiveness in resistance operations following the release of each new strip. MI6 handed the file to the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, with a note, asset codename, Harlequin. Recommend contact and coordination. Contact came in the form of Alan Marlowe, an SOE field agent posing as a Swiss photographer. He met Claudette in a smoky jazz club in Montmartre, where she sketched musicians between sips of watered wine. When he revealed his true purpose, she barely looked up from her drawing. "I'm already at war," she said. "You just want to make it official." Under SOE guidance, Claudette's cartoons evolved. Her gags now carried layers of coded messages, each vetted and aligned with Allied strategy. She embedded details in background graffiti, coffee cups, wallpaper, anywhere the Gestapo wouldn't look. Soon, her work was smuggled out to London, reprinted, and re-smuggled back into France under different names. The Nazis never realized they were fighting an army led by a comic strip. Her most famous strip, published just before D-Day, featured the idiot wolf attempting to steal a baguette hidden beneath a beach towel, while British bulldogs swam in the background. The strip alerted resistance cells to prepare for sabotage efforts across northern France. German intelligence never deciphered it. But her notoriety grew. In autumn 1944, a raid on a resistance safehouse revealed unfinished sketches. Claudette's style was distinct. The Gestapo gave her a new name, La Louve, the she-wolf. Paris was burning. Resistance fighters had taken to the streets. Claudette worked out of a bookstore cellar, drawing by candlelight and sending sketches via bike couriers. She lived on stale crusts and fear. When an informant betrayed her location, she barely escaped. Alan Marlowe wasn't so lucky. Captured and tortured, he never revealed her name. Devastated, Claudette vanished. Rumors swirled. Some said she'd fled to London. Others believed she'd been executed. In truth, she had gone underground, literally. With help from railway workers, she took refuge in the old catacombs beneath the city, living among bones and shadows. From there, she began her final act. She created a short animated film, less than 2 minutes long, using stolen German film reels. It featured the idiot wolf sneaking into a grand theater filled with rats in SS uniforms. One by one, the wolf accidentally detonated fireworks hidden in their seats. The final frame showed a map of Europe burning into the shape of a phoenix. The film was distributed under cover of night to Parisian cinemas, slipped into German-approved newsreels. No one noticed until it played to a full house in the Theatre du Grand Rex. The Gestapo was furious. Dozens were arrested. Claudette's name appeared on every wanted list in the Reich. But the war was turning. By the time Paris was liberated in August 1944, Claudette emerged from hiding to a city that had memorized her lines. Children drew the idiot wolf in chalk on Nazi tanks. Her cartoons had survived where guns failed. She was awarded the Croix de Guerre, though she declined it. "I didn't fight with courage," she said. "I fought with cowardice and sarcasm. But I still fought." After the war, she refused interviews and returned to quiet life in Normandy. Her last known strip showed the idiot wolf, now elderly, planting seeds in a field. The caption read, "After the storm, the soil still remembers." In 1969, decades after her last cartoon, a small museum in Lyon displayed her original sketchbooks. Veterans wept. Children laughed. Historians scratched their heads. How could a few doodles turn the tide of history? The answer, perhaps, lies in what Claudette once told Alan Marlowe, before he vanished forever into Gestapo hands. "When the world loses its sense of humor, we're already dead. My job is to keep us alive, one stupid wolf at a time." In early 1943, the British Admiralty received a disturbing message from a coastal radio station in Gibraltar. Convoy HG-129, comprising 23 merchant ships and 3 Royal Navy escorts, had gone silent somewhere west of the Azores. No distress signals. No wreckage. No survivors. The convoy had simply vanished. The Atlantic, already a graveyard of steel and sailors, now held a new ghost. Captain Alastair Penfield, a veteran of the Battle of the Atlantic, was tasked with investigating. He had hunted U-boats from the icy waters of Scapa Flow to the warm coasts of West Africa, but nothing in his experience prepared him for what he would uncover. "Convoys don't just disappear," he told his crew. "They die loudly." But HG-129 had made no sound. Penfield's orders were to escort a follow-up convoy through the same path, this time with additional air cover and new radar systems developed in secret. Over the next week, Royal Navy ships combed the suspected region, watching their sonar like hawks. What they found wasn't a wolf pack, it was a phantom. Blips would appear on the radar, then vanish. Sounds detected by sonar would mimic wails, only to resolve into unnatural metallic clangs. Aircraft reported seeing strange wakes, then nothing. It was as if the ocean itself was playing tricks. Then, during a moonless night, a destroyer escort, HMS Valiant, spotted something. A small U-boat surfaced briefly off their port bow, completely black, coated in an unfamiliar matte finish. No periscope shimmer. No reflective steel. Just a shadow in motion. Before the crew could react, it was gone beneath the waves. Word of this encounter reached Bletchley Park, where codebreaker Edward Venn reviewed intercepted German transmissions. Most were banal or encrypted routine. But one message, marked with an unusual code string, caught his eye. Nebelflot reports success. Confirm silent strike on HG-129. No detection. Surface contact avoided. Nebelflot. Missed fleet. The Kriegsmarine had been experimenting, Venn surmised. This wasn't just another wolf pack. This was something else. Something invisible. Back in Germany, within the walls of a classified naval facility near Kiel, Admiral Karl Donitz received reports on Operation Nebel. The project had originated from a unit led by engineer Helmut Kessler, who believed traditional steel U-boats were too easily detected by radar and sonar. His solution was radical. Coat vessels in a radar-absorbent material and outfit them with magnetic silencers to dampen sonar return. 10 Type 7 U-boats were retrofitted in early 1943, assigned to Wolfpack Nebel. They trained in isolation, operating under full radio silence. Their commander, Oberleutnant Felix Kruger, was a fanatic believer in the stealth doctrine. He boasted they would become ghosts in the Atlantic, death from nowhere. HG-129 was their first target. The fleet had moved in formation, undetected, striking simultaneously with torpedoes launched from beneath thermal layers that confused Allied sonar. Within 15 minutes, all 23 ships were sunk. They did not surface. They left no survivors. It was not just efficiency, it was erasure. Back in the Atlantic, Captain Penfield ordered a decoy operation. A false convoy, fitted with dummy ships and radio traffic mimicking real merchant chatter, was deployed west of the Azores. Penfield's own destroyer, HMS Intrepid, shadowed from a distance. Days passed in silence. Then, sonar detected movement, multiple contacts approaching low and slow. Penfield waited, tense. At 0300 hours, torpedo wakes streaked through the water, targeting the dummy ships. Penfield's trap was sprung. Depth charges and sonar pings followed in a thunderous ballet. One U-boat was forced to surface. It was unlike any they had seen. Matte black skin. Angular hull. No conning tower flag. As Penfield's crew prepared to board, the sub exploded from within. Self-destruction. Over the next 2 days, 2 more Nebel U-boats were cornered and destroyed. One was depth-charged until its hull collapsed, scattering classified equipment across the seafloor. Divers recovered part of a sonar deflection panel and a watertight canister containing coded journals. The others simply vanished. With the loss of nearly half the missed fleet, and Donut's increasing paranoia, Operation Nebel was disbanded. The remaining U-boats were reassigned or scuttled. Kruger was last seen departing Lorient in May 1943, commanding U-621, destination unknown. Decades later, in 2002, a deep-sea exploration team mapping the mid-Atlantic ridge discovered a peculiar sonar echo. Upon investigation, they found a U-boat wreck sitting upright on the ocean floor, 4,000 meters down. It had no hull number, no flag, no logbooks, just a skeleton crew of 7, long dead. One held a rusted Luger in his lap, another a journal written in encoded poetry. They were ghosts indeed. The wreck was confirmed to be U-621. Kruger's body was never recovered. His journal, now displayed in the Royal Navy Museum, ends with a chilling line, translated from cryptic German verse. We became the ocean's breath / not seen, not heard, only felt in death. For decades, the story of the ghost convoy was dismissed as wartime confusion. The official explanation remained loss due to submarine activity. But to those who studied the war beneath the waves, there was always something odd about the total silence. Captain Penfield, who retired in 1948, was asked during a lecture what the sea had taught him. He answered, "The Atlantic never lies. But sometimes, it whispers. And somewhere, beneath the waves, the forgotten U-boats of the missed fleet still rest, unseen, undisturbed and unremembered, except by those who heard their silence." In the shadow of the Ural Mountains, where the snow howls and iron sings, the Soviet Union planted a factory not with stone, but with sweat. It was called Plant 721, built in desperation after Hitler's Operation Barbarossa shattered the Western Front. Entire cities were packed into freight trains, machine tools, steel presses, blueprints, even half-assembled tanks, and dragged across thousands of miles of frozen land to Magnitogorsk. There, in a valley that once held only frost and ore, Stalin decreed that tanks would grow like wheat. They called it the Iron Orchard. And it was women who tilled its soil. When the men went to the front, the women were sent to the forges. Among them was Anya Volkova, 17 years old, from Smolensk. She had been working in a textile mill when the Germans came. Her brother, Victor, enlisted the day after their parents were killed in a bombing raid. Anya was too young to fight, too angry to grieve. She volunteered for evacuation labor and found herself in the freezing heart of the Urals, clutching a hammer and a ration card, wondering how she would survive. Plant 721 had no walls in its first weeks, just tarpaulins and metal frames, exposed to wind and frost. The first tanks were built under open sky, snow melting on hot steel. There were no proper uniforms, no protective gear. They wore wool scarves, burlap aprons, and hope. The work was brutal. The furnaces roared 24 hours a day, powered by coal and desperation. Anya was assigned to the turret assembly line. She was strong for her size, and quicker than most. In the first month, she learned to weld, rivet, and curse like a soldier. The factory ran on shifts that never ended. 3 hours of sleep, 2 meals of black bread and beet soup, and endless hours at the line. Accidents were frequent. Anya once watched a girl lose her arm in the press. No one screamed. There was no time. But there was pride. Each tank bore a name, painted in white on the turret. For Moscow, for the motherland, for Pyotr. Every worker added something, a signature, a flower, a ribbon tied to the cannon. It was superstition, but it mattered. Anya wrote for Victor on her first finished tank. She never knew if he saw it. In spring 1942, a German prisoner, captured near Voronezh, was sent to assist with labor. He was tall, blond, and silent. His name was Dieter Mahler. The other women despised him, but the factory commander, Comrade Basilev, insisted he was loyal and had technical value. Anya, fluent in German from her schooling, was ordered to oversee him. At first, she spat near him when he passed. Then she watched him work. He was precise, fast, and oddly gentle with the machines. He fixed a cracked weld on a turret Anya had nearly botched. She didn't thank him. But the next day, she handed him his food ration instead of tossing it. He didn't speak for weeks. Then one day, he asked her, in broken Russian, "You have brother?" She nodded. "He fight." She nodded again. "Then this," he said, gesturing to the tank. "For him too." They never became friends. But they worked side by side, silently, efficiently. Rumors swirled. Anya didn't care. She was building tanks, not reputations. One night, a saboteur struck. The fuel lines caught fire. Half the welding floor went up in flames. Dieter was blamed. Anya knew he was innocent. She had seen the real culprit, Nikolai Reznikov, a drunken machinist furious at having been demoted. She reported him, and he was arrested. Dieter was transferred soon after, relocated by the NKVD without explanation. Anya never saw him again. The fire delayed production. Morale collapsed. But then, a letter arrived. Addressed to Anya, in Victor's handwriting, smudged with dirt and blood. "I saw a tank marked, 'For Victor.' It pulled me out of the mud near Kursk. That was you, wasn't it? I'm still alive. Keep building. We need them." She read it aloud to the entire factory. The women cried, then went back to work with fire in their hearts. They began painting names in gold now. By late 1943, Plant 721 was producing 30 T-34s a week. Anya was promoted to line supervisor. She was 20, with hands like iron and eyes that saw nothing but work. She'd lost friends to fatigue, frostbite, and sorrow. But the tanks rolled on. In April 1945, the war nearing its end, one of their tanks was chosen for a ceremonial crossing into Berlin. It was pristine, flawless, a mechanical hymn to sacrifice. The workers voted to name it the Iron Orchard, in honor of the plant itself. Anya stenciled the letters herself. When the tank reached Berlin, it carried an envelope inside, sealed in wax, addressed to "Whoever drives this machine." It contained a photograph of the women of Plant 721, covered in soot, grinning with teeth like wolves. The war ended. The plant slowed. Anya returned to Smolensk to find rubble and weeds. Victor never came home. His name was carved into a monument near Kursk. She never married. Instead, she taught metallurgy at the same factory, now called the People's Steel Institute. She was quiet, stern, and revered. Years later, a museum in Moscow displayed a single turret with gold-painted words, "For Victor." Tourists passed it, snapping photos. Few noticed the name etched into the bolt plate, A. Volkova. And in the Urals, long after the forges cooled and the banners fell, old women would still point to the hills and say, "That's where we grew steel like crops. That's where the orchard bloomed. That's where we saved the world, with fire and grit and no men at all." In the last desperate months of the Pacific War, the skies over Okinawa were filled with fire and death. Waves of Japanese kamikaze aircraft slammed into American ships, turning steel hulls into funeral pyres. The U.S. Navy called it the Divine Wind Offensive. The Japanese called it Shinpu Tokubetsu Kogiki Tai. Everyone else just called it hell. Amid this chaos, a black P-51 Mustang painted with a crimson rising sun was seen slicing through the clouds, firing not at Americans, but at the kamikazes themselves. It was a ghost plane, never landing at known bases, never acknowledging hails. Pilots swore it saved them. Navy radar operators logged it as unidentified friendly. But no one could explain who was flying it. His name was Lieutenant Nathaniel Nate Harper. He was the son of a white Texan pilot and a Japanese schoolteacher from Kyoto. Raised between two cultures, he belonged to neither. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, his father was killed on the USS Arizona, and his mother was interned in a relocation camp in Arizona. Nate, already enlisted in the Army Air Forces, was reassigned to a quiet intelligence post. His heritage made him a liability, too Japanese for trust, too American for hatred. But one man saw potential, Colonel Frank Donovan of the OSS, the precursor to the CIA. He had a vision for a covert program, Operation Tanuki, to place a deep cover agent within the Japanese Aerial Command. The mission: infiltrate the Kamikaze Corps and dismantle it from the inside. Donovan needed someone fluent in language, customs, and aviation. Nate was the only candidate. He trained in silence. Japanese dialect drills, samurai history, imperial military protocol. He learned to fly the Mitsubishi Zero and studied their dive patterns. He was taught how to survive interrogation, resist torture, and deliver false loyalty with convincing fervor. In late 1944, Nate was secretly transferred to the Philippines, where a captured Japanese officer's identity was assumed. After months of staging, he was flown under the false name of Hiroshi Tanaka to a kamikaze training base near Kyushu. There, among starving teenage pilots reciting Emperor Hirohito's decrees, Nate posed as one of them. He was older, more skilled, and highly respected. He used that position to subtly undermine morale. He whispered doubts. He loosened bolts on bomb mounts. He smuggled out flight plans via coded radio bursts disguised as weather reports. But it wasn't enough. He watched too many boys vanish into the sky, faces calm as they plunged into destroyers below. That's when he made a choice. He would fight fire with fire. From a hidden airfield on Luzon, constructed by Filipino guerrillas and manned by OSS agents, Nate launched a modified P-51 Mustang, matte black, minimal radar profile, no identifying numbers. Painted with a red sun to fool enemy pilots and air defense gunners, it was designed for speed and stealth. He called it Kuro no Tsubasa, Black Wing. He flew solo. No wingmen, no radio contact. He listened to Japanese comms, intercepting kamikaze squadron calls. When they launched, he followed. He would dive out of the sun, taking out the bomb-laden planes before they could reach the fleet. He never shot to kill the pilots, only to disable. But in the sky, mercy was a myth. In one mission, 5 Zeros dove toward the USS Bunker Hill. Nate took down 3 before the 4th clipped his wing. He crash-landed on Okinawa, broken ribs and torn uniform. U.S. Marines found him unconscious. A Japanese patch on his jacket nearly got him shot. Only a sealed OSS envelope saved him. He was never supposed to be seen. After recovering, he begged to return. His superiors refused. The mission was burned. Operation Tanuki was erased from records. But Nate escaped from a Navy hospital days later. He stole a backup Mustang from a secret hangar and took to the skies again. The Kamikazes called him Tenchi no Sure, the Angel of Death. They feared him more than flak or fighters. In June 1945, he intercepted his final squadron, 12 kamikazes bound for the U.S. carrier Intrepid. It was an ambush. One of the pilots was his former bunkmate from the training base, who had recognized his voice over the radio weeks before. They lured him in, then turned on him mid-air. Nate fought like a demon. He downed 6, then a 7th rammed him wing first. Flames engulfed his engine. He crashed into the Pacific, hundreds of miles from land. The Navy never recovered his body. His name was quietly stricken from rosters. His mother received no medals, only a condolence letter from an unnamed department. The Mustang was never officially listed in flight logs. Operation Tanuki was buried. Decades later, in 1987, a Japanese fishing vessel recovered part of a rusted aircraft wing with a black finish and a crimson sun. DNA from bone fragments matched Harper's mother's records. The discovery was never publicly acknowledged. But in a small memorial garden outside Kyoto, a stone stands with no name, just an inscription in Japanese. He flew between 2 flags and died beneath neither. American veterans who served at Okinawa sometimes speak of the black plane that saved them. In dusty reunion halls, over beers and silence, they raise toasts to the man they never met but always remembered. The sky remembers him too. In the hush between thunder and wind, over the waters where the kamikazes once dove, the echo of black wings still soars. And now, as the smoke dissipates and the engines fall silent, you carry with you the weight of a story never meant to be told. The Black Mustang's roar still echoes in the corridors of conscience, a reminder that some secrets demand blood and shadows for their keeping. Remember, history's darkest whispers often hide in plain sight, and once heard, they shape the soul forever. Are you prepared to live with the truth?